Hi, Wilfredo Hernandez here on behalf of Brooklyn Community Pride Center.
Jackie Odoshkin on behalf of Immigration Equality.
And we're here today with the LGBTQ New Americans Oral History Project with our second narrator of the project, Elle. Welcome, Elle.
Thank you.
Can you please state your name?
My name is Elle.
And can you tell us where you are right now?
I am at the Brooklyn Community Pride Center.
And it is May 22nd.
2016. So, Elle, maybe you can start off by talking a little bit about where you grew up.
I grew up in Bulgaria. Well, I grew up in Bulgaria with a 3-year stint in Los Angeles, California. So I was born and raised in Plovdiv, which is the second biggest city in Bulgaria. And when I was 5 years old, my dad applied for a work visa to come to the States because we already had some family here. My mother's parents and my mother's aunt and uncle had come here as refugees in the 60s, I believe. So we already had family in Los Angeles, and it kind of made sense to go there. And so Dad applied for a work visa, and then Mom, as his wife, and me as his daughter, joined him and moved to Los Angeles. And as soon as we got to Los Angeles, my dad called his employer, who would not return the call. And this went on for a few days until Dad got a call back, and the employer said, well, actually, I went bankrupt, so I can't hire you anymore. And then my parents were, I don't remember all of it. I was 5, so it's kind of blurry. But I do remember there being panic and confusion, and we found an immigration lawyer that my parents spoke to. And she said that we have 2 options, either to go back to Bulgaria or to stay in the States, but my parents would not be legally allowed to work. And my parents chose to stay. We were living with my grandparents at the time, my mother's parents. My parents went to night school to study English. I went to kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. And then when 3 years were up, we decided to go back to Bulgaria, both to renew our visa and also to see our family and friends. But when we got back and went to the consulate, they told us that they will not renew our visa. And my parents were confused and asked why, and people at the consulate were like, well, you stayed in the States for 3 years without working when you were on a work visa. That's not how this works. So we're not going to renew this for you. And that day we went home, and that was the first out of only 2 times that I've seen my dad cry. Because we spent 3 years in Los Angeles. We had the Disney Channel. Which you don't get in Bulgaria. And, things in LA are new and shiny. They've got skyscrapers and, wide boulevards. And you go back to Bulgaria and it's this gray place with all these buildings that were there from, the communist years. And everyone's bitter and rude. And, that changed our life once again, changed our plans. We had to live with my aunt and uncle, my mother's sister and sister's husband, and my cousin in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had to sleep on a camping bed, which I had to make every night and then unmake every morning and rest against the window. And winter was coming. Wow, this sounds very Game of Thronesy. Winter was coming, and I didn't have winter clothes, so I had to borrow some from my cousin. And my cousin's a boy, so it was very difficult and just change that neither of us were ready for. I started going to school, and I absolutely hated it. Kids were mean, and as I was growing up, my facial features started to change, obviously, and so some of my Armenian features, because I also have Armenian relatives, started coming out, and my nose grew bigger, and kids started making fun of me about my nose. And they called me all kinds of things, like the bird with the beak, or just like the girl with the big nose. And I remember older boys in school blocking me from the canteen, saying, "You're too ugly to get breakfast. You can't come in here." And I remember the day that happened, I was so hungry that I passed out in my last class because I hadn't eaten all day. And I was just I think I was depressed because I didn't think, back when we lived in the States, I didn't feel like that would happen. I felt like no one cared what you look like. And I was in a class, it was an ESL class, so English as a second language, and all the kids in the class were also immigrants who weren't native speakers. And so it was normal for everyone to look different and to speak differently and act differently. But in Bulgaria, it's like mostly Bulgarians. So, if you were different, it was a huge deal. And I had some relatives from Los Angeles every once in a while send me presents from America. And like they sent me this watch that looked really cool and high tech at the time. And the kids hated me for it. At first, kids, I was a kid too, but my classmates would come over and be like, "Hey, can I see your watch?" And I would show it to them, and then they would go to their friends and be like, "She's so stuck up. She thinks she's like this important person with her watch." And I would hear them say these things, and I would think, "You came to me and asked if you can see my watch. Like, I didn't come to you and be like, 'Hey, look at this watch,' It was just so confusing." And in the meantime, my parents kept going back and trying to apply for a new work visa, and every time they got rejected. And I think on the fifth time, the person that was interviewing us said, "If you come here one more time and apply for a work visa, we will put a black seal on your passports and you will never be able to enter the States again." And my parents just could not handle it. It was because they always had this idea that we will go back to America. We will go back to America. We did not want to stay in Bulgaria. And then someone else at the consulate, I guess, overheard that interview and approached my parents and said, "Listen, there's another way to do this. If you have relatives in the States, they can apply for a green card for you. Don't go the work visa route, take the green card route." And so in 2000, my grandparents applied for a green card for my parents and I. But we didn't know how long it would take, so we just waited. And I had gotten used to living in Bulgaria, and now when I think back to it, I'm grateful that I grew up there because my life was probably harder than it would have been here, and that taught me a lot of things that I wouldn't know otherwise today. But I still felt like it was stifling, I guess. I mean, when you're 5 years old and you go to Los Angeles and you see, these nicer, bigger apartments and these wider streets and Disneyland, and you go back to Bulgaria, you're like, wow, there's so much more than this. I can't stay here. So I always knew that I will leave Bulgaria again. And I was doing really well in school. I was getting straight A's. My English was still very good because I kept taking extracurricular classes in English. And so I decided I'll apply for college in some other English-speaking country. And since Bulgaria joined the European Union, I was able to go to any other country in the European Union to study, and I chose England. And so when I was 19, I moved to England for college, spent 3 years there, which was also a transformative experience. Even though I was an adult at the time, I felt like it changed me just as much as America did when I was little. That was also the first time I fell in love with a girl, which was extremely confusing. And then while I was in England, my dad called me and said, the green cards came in 10 years later, 10 years after we applied. It was 2010 when we got the green cards, except it turned out that only my mom and I had them. My dad didn't get one. And so that was a whole other, I hate the word journey nowadays because I feel like it's overused, but that was a whole other ordeal. So mom moved to the States. In the meantime, dad found an attorney and tried to figure out how he can also get a green card as my mother's husband. And then I got a re-entry permit so I can finish college in England and then move to the States when I graduate. And so in 2012, when I graduated, I moved to Los Angeles. And my parents had already been there since 2010. My mom and I had to go to a psychologist and get a report and say how we don't want our family to be broken up, and that we need, my dad with us. And it was even longer and complicated than I can explain now, but he ended up getting a green card as well. So they were in Los Angeles, and I moved there when I was 20. How old was I in 2012? 23. And I lived with them. I started working. I started going to grad school, but then Los Angeles also didn't feel quite like home. In the meantime, I fell in love with someone on the East Coast, and I also visited New York, and I fell in love with it, so I decided I'm going there when I finish grad school. And as soon as I graduated, a month later, I was in New York, and now I'm in New York, and this is my home. That was a very long-winded answer to your question, I guess.
And what year was that you finished grad school and came to New York again?
2015, December 2015, and I moved to New York January 2016.
And did you reside in Brooklyn right away, or or not Brooklyn, Queens, right? Astoria?
Yeah, I moved to Astoria, Queens. I had a friend who lived in Astoria and just happened to be looking for a roommate when I was looking to move, and so the puzzle kind of figured itself out.
What is it like living in Astoria?
Oh, I love it. I love Astoria because there's a lot of restaurants and coffee shops and bars and supermarkets. So it feels busy like the city, but the architecture is low. There's no skyscrapers. So it kind of feels like the downtown of a smaller city. It's very vibrant. It's actually very cleverly, set up, because all the streets that are, if you look on the map, all the streets that are, say, horizontal on the map would be residential streets, and then all the vertical streets would be the ones with all the businesses on them. So when you live on a residential street, it's quiet, but when you go half a block to either side, that's where all the shops and restaurants are. So it's very convenient. And I already found a Bulgarian shop where I buy a lot of my food, which is great. Astoria is actually known for its Greek population, so there's a lot of Greek people, but there's also people from Colombia and Mexico and Italy and we have people from everywhere. It's very diverse. It's very diverse. A lot of young people, and it just feels right. It feels like home. Yeah.
What kinds of things do you buy at the Bulgarian store?
Get my cheese there. Bulgarian yogurt, very important. Also, something we call lukanka, which is a type of dry cured meat. And we also have these little desserts. I don't know what they're called in English. They're called wafli in Bulgarian. I guess it's like a wafer with chocolate or something. And all these things are imported from Bulgaria. And some of them, like the yogurt, they actually make it in New Jersey. But they use this like bacteria that is used, the same one that's used in Bulgaria to make yogurt from milk. Because actually, even the word yogurt feels wrong because the translation of yogurt in Bulgarian is literally kiselo mleko, which is sour milk, because that's what yogurt is. And I feel like it's so hard to find real yogurt here because a lot of it feels like this like fake creamy thing when it's actually supposed to be sour, and within like a couple of days of opening it, it's supposed to start like getting watery and more sour. That's how you know that it's real. And so I'm really happy that I found the real deal in Astoria.
Is there anything that you miss about Bulgaria?
Oh yeah, I miss my grandma, my dad's mom. She's back in Bulgaria, which actually makes me really sad because she's alone there. My friends, obviously. You know what else I miss? In Bulgaria, you can drink in public. Whereas here in the States, you can't have a beer on the beach, which just feels wrong. I remember just like sitting in the park and having beers in the afternoons and like singing or dancing or playing, I don't know if it's the same in English, heck. It's like this, it's this thing, it looks like a ball it's knitted and inside it has sand and you like kick it around and it's supposed to not fall on the ground.
Hacky sack.
Hacky sack, okay, we call it heck, yeah. So we used to do that in the parks as well.
Brings me back.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't miss customer service because I feel like people in Bulgaria are much ruder. And bureaucracy is even worse. It's just like everything takes a long time. Most things you can't do online. You have to go in the office and be in line for hours. And like you'll go to the shop and it's funny, even here in Astoria, when I go to the Bulgarian shop, some of the cashiers are like just as rude as people are in Bulgaria. And I'm like, oh, that's right. That's why they're like, you brought everything from home, not just the food, but the attitude as well. I guess like the familiarity of it. Though nowadays when I go back, whenever I have the chance to go back, it feels kind of foreign. I've definitely changed. It's weird. Because neither Bulgaria nor England nor America feel 100% like home, but all three of them don't feel foreign either. It's kind of in the middle. And so one of the questions that I just hate is when people ask, so where is home? When they hear about, wherever I've lived, and I always go, I don't fucking know. It's everywhere, nowhere at the same time.
What's your life like now that you're living in New York?
Busy, in a good way. There's always stuff going on in New York. I love it. And even if you're not making a lot of money, as long as you can get yourself a Metro card, you can find a lot of free things to do. And I find it easier to meet people here, easier than anywhere else. It was very hard in Los Angeles to meet people because you're always in your car, so you're not really talking to anyone unless you get out of the car at the gas station. And if you're a woman, like you get catcalled. So that's like as much communication as you get. Not really. I'm probably like downplaying LA. That was my personal experience. But here you kind of just like sometimes I just like end up talking to the person next to me on the train, or you go to the park and, someone is dancing or singing in the park, and so the person next to you is like, isn't that great? And you're like, yeah, and you start talking. It's just, it happens organically. I love that. It's very expensive. It was much harder to find a job than I thought it would be. It took me a longer time. And rent is very expensive. Right now, I think about 3/4 of my income go to rent and bills. maybe even 4/5. I haven't actually sat down to do the math, but most of it goes to rent and bills. But even though it's hard right now, I wouldn't rather be anywhere else. It just feels right.
Do you feel like you found a community here?
Yes. Yeah. I have 2 roommates. I get along with both of them, but with one of them especially because it sounds like we were kind of brought up in a similar way. And because actually her family is from Eastern Europe as well. And even though she was born and raised here in the States, we both like to drink beers on our balcony and, make like crack jokes about white people walking by, even though we're both like ostensibly white when you look at us. But she does improv, so she's always cracking me up and doing the Long Island accent for me. But we were like, whenever she like buys a pack of beer, she'll be like, help yourself. Or whenever I bake a cake, I'll say, help yourself, and we'll like share food or go out together grocery shopping or buying plants for the apartment. So it feels like I live with a sibling almost. And then my landlord is great. He's this very loud Greek man who is always taking care of us, always fixing stuff around the apartment. And whenever he comes in to fix something, he also cleans the apartment without us even asking, which is amazing. Thank you, George. And whenever I go down the stairs to leave the building, and almost always he's somewhere in the neighborhood because he manages several buildings on the block. He's always running around doing stuff, and every time, without fail, he'll be like, how are you? And how's your day? And just be very, there's that neighborly feeling, which I love. Like, that's something that I missed about Bulgaria, and that's something I didn't have in Los Angeles because my parents and I lived in an apartment, in a big apartment building, and no one would say hi to you in the elevator or the stairs. Everyone's just like, it's like they have these, I don't know what they're called, like how for windows they have these, what are they called?
Curtains or blinds?
Or, yeah.
Or
Blinders.
Yeah, or like, this is a better analogy. Horses, how they put these things on them so they only see straight? It's like people are wearing those, So they're not looking at anything else apart from like their path in front of them. They're kind of like ignoring you, and that always felt so weird to me. I want to say hi to my neighbors and know about their day. And, my landlord's daughter works at a bakery, so almost every week she'll bring us goodies from the bakery. And then, when we bake cookies, we'll give them cookies. It just feels good. Like, take care of each other, So that was something that I missed from Bulgaria and that I got here in New York that I did not in LA. So that's something I like about here too. But I guess that's maybe more particular to Astoria. I don't know if everywhere in New York is like that, but I really lucked out with where I live.
And how do you like your work?
I love my work. I actually work with LGBT immigrants, helping them go to school, get jobs, find shelter or affordable housing. I refer them to other organizations that help them with their legal status and managing, immigration stuff. And it's really interesting because, I feel like I'm one of them, and I'm also helping them. And I recognize that I'm in a more fortunate position, which is why I'm able to help them. I'm a citizen now, and I've lived here for a while now. It's been, 3.5 years? And it's funny. Sometimes I actually hang out with people that are my clients outside of work. And even though we've grown up in vastly different countries and brought up differently and, you know, love different foods or listen to different music, somehow there's this connection, this bond, and this understanding, because we never compare who's had a bigger struggle. We recognize that we've all had our own struggles, and that kind of brings us together because we're all here, or we've all made it to one extent or another, and we're all kind of helping each other out. And I saw someone who is an unemployed asylum seeker give their food to a homeless person on the subway. It was just this communal feeling that I love.
Maybe we can backtrack just a little bit and talk a little bit more about your identity and your experiences as a LGBT immigrant, right? Q immigrant. So just for the record, maybe you can self-identify for us. How do you identify in that spectrum?
Depending on who asks, I identify as queer. That would be my ideal label if I had to label myself. I've also said pansexual to people. To my grandma, I said bisexual because the word queer doesn't even exist in my native language, so there's no way to explain it to her. And I think pansexual is also pretty, complicated to explain to someone who cannot even comprehend, that there might be more than two genders or anything like that. So queer is who I am. And again, depending on who asks, it might be bisexual or pansexual.
Can you unpack that term for us a little bit about what it means to you? I know the term queer in the community means a number of different things to different people.
Sure. To me, queer means falling in love with or being attracted to people regardless of their gender identity. I just feel like I'm attracted to or fall in love with human beings. I don't really think about, when I look at them, I don't think about, I wonder how you identify, or, I wonder what genitalia you have. Like, I don't care. Because it's always been more about their personality and their integrity and their kindness and compassion and sense of humor, things that are, I guess, they're irrelevant to where you identify on the gender spectrum. So, yeah.
And you mentioned that, and maybe if we could backtrack a little bit more on that, how you fell in love with, for the first time, I think you mentioned when you first went off to university.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe unpack that more for us about,
Sure.
Maybe any recollections you had, growing up in Bulgaria, or, maybe inform us a little bit about what the climate is like there around these kinds of issues.
Oh, yeah. Let me just have some water.
Sure.
So, let me think. When it comes to my sexuality and my sexual identity, I had never questioned my straightness until I was 21 years old. I had boyfriends, some of them I even loved, and was happy with, but I never, in fact, you know what? Growing up, whenever we would go to a party and people would get drunk and two girls would start kissing, I thought it was disgusting. I thought, they're just doing it for attention. I would never do that. It was just, it felt so foreign, something that I would never ever do. And it wasn't until I moved to England for college and I had this neighbor who lived in the house next to me. I lived in a terraced house. You know, those houses that share walls. And next door, their Wi-Fi was called the gay house. And when I met them, it was 3 guys and a girl, and all of them identified as gay. And the girl and I started hanging out a lot and became very close friends. And I really liked her. She loved to cook, just like me, and to eat, respectively. She loved to travel. She was a DJ in her spare time. It was something she did as a hobby. She studied Italian just for fun. I love learning languages as well. And she was very beautiful. I called her an English rose. And there was something very, I don't know what the right word is, gentle about her. She was very, how do I put this? Okay, the way she walked was kind of masculine in a way. Like there was this like fierceness when she was walking, but her face and her gestures were very elegant. And I loved that kind of beautifully strange, almost contradictory way that she presented herself and carried herself in the world. And then one day I was looking at her and I thought to myself, oh my God, I want to kiss her. And that freaked me out. I was so scared because I had never felt that before. And I thought, is this because I know that she's gay, so I know that she would be open to it? Like, am I actually, if she wasn't gay, would I still feel this attraction? Is this something that I'm putting in my head? And I just could not, does not compute. I was just super confused. And I felt like she might like me, although she had never said it explicitly. And I felt myself flirting with her. I started flirting with her, and she was flirting back. And I was like, oh my God, this is happening. And the tension was growing, and like it was obvious that we liked each other. And for maybe a month, I was always on the verge of kissing her, but then I was like, no. I was too scared. And then one day I was like, fuck it. And I kissed her. And it was one of the most passionate kisses I'd ever had. And so we started dating. And it was very convenient because we were neighbors. And it was a very scary and confusing and transformative time because I didn't hide it from people around me. My roommates knew. People from school would see us in town, like walking hand by hand. But people from school that had never even spoken to me before would come up to me and be like, hey, are you a lesbian? And I'd be like, I can't believe like you don't even know me and you're coming up to me to ask me that question. And I remember one time we got harassed in a pub. We were playing pool in a pub, and we weren't like kissing or flirting or doing anything, but I guess maybe just like the way we were looking at each other kind of showed that there was something more to friendship. And a bunch of dudes came in and called us dykes and started like we were messing around with our pool table, like would move around the balls on the table and kind of get in the way. And then they became kind of physically imposing. Like they would invade our space. They would come very close to us and kind of like one of them pressed me against the table, and another one was standing behind my girlfriend. And so I ran off. I ran off to the bar, and I told the bartender, I said, "Can you please do something? These guys are harassing us." And he said, "Well, what do you want me to do? They're clients." And I was like, "Well, we're all clients also, and I feel unsafe." And he said, "I can't do anything about it." And so my girlfriend and I just picked up and left. And actually those guys started walking after us, and I was freaking the fuck out. I was really scared because both of us were petite and, not necessarily, I don't have any fighting skills. I don't think my girlfriend did either, even though she could be pretty feisty, but I think it was more attitude than anything else. So they started following us, and I remember my heart beating really fast, but then a few blocks into it, they kind of gave up on us. And we went home, and that kind of scared me. And so after that, we would hold hands in public, but we would not kiss in public or really try to show a lot of affection because we were kind of scared. Because it was a small town where I went to college. And a few months into it, I called my parents on Skype. I called my mom first, and I was very nervous. But I've always been close to my parents. They've always known about the people that I'm dating. I've always been very open about my relationships with them. And so I really wanted to tell them. And I wasn't sure how to phrase it. And so I called my mom, and I was shaking. And I said, "Mom, I have to tell you something." And whenever I say something like that, my parents are like, "Oh no, what have you done?" So she was already kind of like, what's going to happen now? And I said, I have a girlfriend. And so the word in Bulgarian is gađe, which is like a gender neutral term. And so I said, I have a gađe. And then I said, and it's a girl. And my mom just froze. And then I could see anger and sadness and disappointment just building up in her face all at the same time. And she wasn't yelling, but she was pretty aggressive in the way she was speaking to me. She said, "You're such a disappointment. You've destroyed all my hopes and dreams. I'm never going to have a normal family now. I'm never going to have grandchildren." She was already looking into the future and predicting all these bad things. And I just remember sitting there thinking, I've always had straight A's. I've always done my chores. I've always come home on time. I didn't do a bunch of things that other kids did because you never let me. My parents would not let me go to the public pool or to go camping with my friends or take the train to another city, to go, on an adventure. I always stayed home or had to come home earlier than the other kids. So I felt like I was always a good daughter. And then for her to suddenly say that I'm her biggest disappointment just because I fell in love with someone who's of the same gender as me was just, I couldn't understand it. And then she started crying. First she was mad, and then she was devastated and just started crying and said, "I can't talk to you anymore," and she hung up. And I don't think she spoke to me for the next 3 months. So after that, I called my dad on Skype, and I told him. He took it a little bit better. At least he didn't call me his biggest disappointment, because I'm an only child also, so that's a big deal. And he said, "Okay, well, I can't say that I'm thrilled, but it's probably a phase, so I'm sure it's fine. I know a lot of people experiment, and you're still young. I'm sure it'll pass, and you'll still end up with a man." And I said, "I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to make any promises. I don't know if this is the only time this is going to happen, or Like, I don't know who I am. And he said, okay, fine. And then he changed the subject, and then we didn't talk about it again. And my mom only resumed talking to me at the end of that school year when I had finished the school year with an A. I was doing really well in school. And she called me to congratulate me, but we did not mention anything about my personal life. There was actually one time she contacted me in those 3 months that she didn't talk to me. It was when I changed my profile picture to a picture of me and my girlfriend, and it was just us standing next to each other and smiling. So it wasn't, obvious that we were together. It could have been like a friend or anyone. But my mom, correctly assumed that the person in this picture next to me is probably my girlfriend. And so when she saw the profile picture, she messaged me on Facebook. My mother messaged me on Facebook and said, I can't believe you're so selfish and you're rubbing this in my face. I can't believe you put that picture on Facebook. Take it off right away. And so I took the picture off and changed it to just a picture of me. And then my mom resumed not speaking to me for the next month and a half or so. And it was so hard because, my girlfriend was like, why did you change the picture? And I told her about my mom, and then, she was understanding, but of course she was also a little upset because she thought, well, you're doing whatever your mom tells you, but you're disregarding like how it's making me feel. And, it's really fucking shitty when you have to choose between the person you love or your parents who you also love. It's just not fair. Eventually that relationship finished. It had nothing to do with, it wasn't because she was a girl or I decided that I'm never going to date girls again. It was just like personality incompatibilities. But after I broke up with her, I thought, okay, I'm going to go back to seeing guys. This will make my life easier. And it's not like I wasn't attracted to guys. And for a while, I felt like maybe I wasn't attracted to girls anymore. I was like, that was so weird. That was like this one-off thing where I just like fell in love with this girl, but now when I look at girls, like I'm not attracted to them. But then I realized it might have to do more with like having a type maybe, because a lot of the girls in my college were very girly girls. And I guess I'm not as attracted to girly girls. I like women that kind of challenge that, feminine, not stereotype, but do you know what I mean? I guess I like queer women. And so for a while I was like, no, this was just like some like lapse or something. I'm back to men. But then I moved to the States, and every once in a while I'll look at a girl and be like, I don't know, maybe I do like girls still. I'm so confused. But I lived with my parents, so it was not like an option to like have a girlfriend or like bring her home. So just like I'm just gonna focus on paying attention to dudes. I'm just gonna look at guys. And I think like for that whole duration I like technically dated only like one person. Because with the others it didn't work out. But then I fell in love with someone online. I found this blog, and I didn't know who was writing it at the time, if it was a man or a woman, or where they were from, or whatever. And I was just like, I really like this person. They're so smart and poetic, and they notice the little things in life, and they have a great sense of humor, and blah, blah, blah. And we started talking, and then I learned it was this woman my age who lives on the East Coast, and she's a gardener, and she's a cook, and she's wildly intelligent and interesting and just gets people, and was such an example for me that, I don't know, I don't know like at what point it started, but I accidentally started flirting with her. It just like came naturally. And she flirted back. And it turned out that she's just like me. She identifies as queer and does not care about the person's gender. And we really started liking each other. We started calling each other baby and like texting every day, and like it turned into a thing. And at one point I was like, wow, I have a girlfriend and I've never even met her. And I went to the East Coast for a week. She actually invited me to go to a music festival with her in Rhode Island. And I thought, well, I'm going to the East Coast anyway for this festival. I might as well check out New York. And so I stayed here for a week and fell in love with New York. Met my girlfriend for the first time. Fell in love with her even more. And decided, that's it, I'm moving. And, in the meantime, there were a lot of reasons for me to move. One of them was that even though I love my parents and they're lovely people, we just do not see eye to eye on a lot of things. And I don't blame them. They grew up in communist Bulgaria. They have their own ideas of what Mexicans are like, what Black people are like. It's just wildly stereotypical preconceptions and prejudices about people, and we would fight a lot. And the one guy that I dated in LA was Mexican, and my mom said the worst things, like huge generalizations about Mexican people that I don't even want to say right now because they're just makes my blood boil just thinking about it. And I would have to say to her, I would be like, how can you say these things when you know that the person that I'm with right now is Mexican? And they obviously somehow magically don't fit your stereotype because maybe it's not true. So can you just shut the fuck up? And we had a huge fight. And then she didn't talk to me. She did not talk to me for a while. And I was like, wow, I did something wrong again. I defended this person that I'm with. And it's just one of those things, my parents are racist. And, they have their ideas of, what men and women should be like. It's still hard for me. I feel like I still also have certain ideas of what men and women should be like. And, like I said earlier, girly girls, what does girly girls even mean? I don't know. But it was just really hard to live under the same roof with them, and I realized I could never live the life that I want as long as I'm with them. And it's just a necessary distance. And so I moved to the East Coast, and now I'm kind of trying to enjoy this newfound freedom, even though my partner visited me on a weekend, and we were walking around in Chelsea, and someone called us dykes. In Chelsea, in New York, in 2016. But whatever, fuck them. So it's really hard. It's, whenever I call my parents, I can't tell them, when they ask me, how was your weekend? I can't say, oh, well, my girlfriend was visiting and we did a bunch of stuff, because they don't even know that I have a girlfriend, because I haven't told them, because I don't want the same thing to happen as last time. And I feel like for parents like mine, it might have actually been easier if I was just a lesbian, because I think in their mind, if I am bisexual or queer or whatever it is, that means I have a choice. I actually tried telling my grandma about my girlfriend a while ago, and my grandma said to me, well, I don't know how you people work, but maybe next time you can just choose a man and stick with that. And I was like, that's not how it works, Grandma. But she's also from a generation where they did kind of just choose a partner and stick with them, And my grandma and my grandpa were very in love. So I don't know how much that applies to them, but it's still, marriage was still a lot more seen as something much more practical back then, whereas now I think there's this emphasis on, marrying for love and romance, and then, movies give you this idea of, the soulmate and how it's supposed to be like this passionate thing and beautiful and happy forever, which it's not, and it can't be, I think, when you've spent so much time with a person. But yeah, sometimes I secretly wish that I was a lesbian. I actually feel like that would be easier. Because then, like, my parents would be like, you know what, we don't have a choice, that's just who she is. Whereas now I really feel like they think, she can always just choose a man again. Yeah.
Thank you. I know that was a really difficult question to unpack, but...
Yeah.
Well, what do you want people to know about LGBTQ immigrants?
When it comes to LGBTQ plus immigrants, I guess I want people, including us, to remember that we're never just one thing at a time. We're always a lot of things at the same time. I know many things have changed my life and continue changing my life. Navigating the world as a woman, a cis woman, navigating the world as a queer woman, navigating the world as someone who maybe doesn't have a home, in the abstract way. I live somewhere, but how much is my home? It's still a question. Navigating the world as someone who doesn't speak English as their primary language, or as someone who has to cut ties with their family in order to be able to live the life that they want, as someone who grew up poor or is still poor. In my case, also someone that was sexually assaulted as an adult. It's just all these things kind of work together in seamless ways to make you who you are. And there might be certain situations or contexts in which certain parts of you kind of come out more. Like when I go to my favorite gay bar, like I go there because I'm queer. We'll joke about like, where are all my gays? We'll say that to each other jokingly and watch RuPaul's Drag Race or something and bond over that. Other times, usually when I go to parties, I will, when people ask me where I'm from, I always say Bulgaria. That has its own can of worms. Believe it or not, I've had people say, oh, yeah, I know about Bulgarians. Aren't you all gypsies and prostitutes? Because that's what people see in the movies. If there's a Bulgarian character in a movie, it's either a mafia guy or a pimp or a prostitute or someone that's involved in what's it called? The shady economy, right? And people in college would joke around with me that I'm probably secretly a whore, or that I'm probably actually a gypsy. I'm not really Bulgarian, and they don't even understand what the word gypsy means or how that they're using it wrong. It's just this whole its own thing. So there's just so many things, so many parts of you that are always out there in the world, that sometimes I actually feel like because I had so many disappointments with men and I had experienced violence and abuse by men on more than one account, I feel like that made me even more prone to seeking out other women to be with because I feel safer with them. Or like sometimes I'll be watching a movie in which a female character will get assaulted, and that will trigger me really badly. So there's like something I think people should always be thinking about is just think about who you're talking to. Never make assumptions about who they are, how they identify. Just try to be respectful to people and be kind always. And we all make mistakes. I still say shit that is ignorant. And I want people to call me out on it so I can learn from that and become a better person. So, yeah.
Is there anything that we don't know about you yet that you want us to know about you and everyone to know about you?
I don't know. I feel like I've said a lot.
That's okay.
I can't think of anything right now.
Is there any last minute thoughts that you'd like to add?
From my experiences with other LGBT immigrants, no matter where they're from, what their status is, what food they love, everyone's been... I think compassion is one of the most important things in the world. And just knowing that you're not alone and that all you have to do is just look for people and you'll find them. And that there's so many people out there that may be nothing like you but may still understand you and love you and care about you just the way you are. So yeah.
Elle, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
your story.
This is my letter box. The box is actually from cookies, and I found this wrapping paper, this Christmas wrapping paper, and I used it to wrap the box in it to make it look nicer. And then I keep a bunch of my letters and cards that I've received over the years from people because I like to write letters and receive them too. And luckily I have a lot of friends that love doing that too, so I have a bunch of pen pals all over the world. I keep these in here. This is something a friend of mine made for me for my birthday, my last birthday in Bulgaria before I left for England. He still is in a punk band, and he is also, what do you call things that make, people that make things out of wood? Carpenter?
Carpenter?
Yeah, so he does carpentry. And so it says, punk is freedom, freedom is music, the music is passion, the passion, that's you. I think he might have been in love with me, I'm not sure. But he made this for me for my birthday, and I've been carrying it around with me wherever I move. And this stays in my room on my mirror. I think it's beautiful. I love things made out of wood, so it's very, very apropos. This is something that my grandma sent me. In Bulgaria, we have this thing called Baba Marta, which means Grandma Martha. We celebrate it on the 1st of March. On the 1st of March, we say that Grandma Martha has arrived, which means spring has arrived. And so people exchange these, they're called martinici. This is a martinica. It's made out of red and white yarn. And it can be in the form of a bracelet or something that you pin onto yourself or a necklace or whatever, as long as it's in these two colors. And my grandma sent me this one over the mail, so I can still celebrate Grandma Martha or Baba Marta. in March. I wore it through the whole month of March, and actually I saw one hanging from a tree in Astoria, which means another Bulgarian has been there, because, well, traditionally you're supposed to take it off from you and put it on a blooming tree once you see a stork. Like, that's the rule. But people, like, nowadays you don't really see storks. So people just, you know, they wear it throughout the month of March, and then they, like, put it on trees and stuff. So in Bulgaria you would see a lot of these, like, you would see trees, like, full with martinici all over their branches. One of my grandma's friends gave me, as you can see, it's a very, very, very old Coca-Cola thingy. My grandma and her friends would use it as a, what's it called, the thing you put out your cigarettes in? Ashtray? Oh, yes. Yes, so it functioned as an ashtray. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a coaster or an ashtray or something, but my grandma back in Bulgaria is part of this, what would you call it, like a pensioners club, where all like the retired people hang out. And her friend was smoking and using this as the ashtray, and I really, really liked it because I like vintage stuff and it has this like vintage feel. And so her friend just washed it and gave it to me. And you can even still see the cigarette stains from when it's been used. And now I just put it on my desk and I put like quarters or whatever in it, you know, little things. Yeah. I wish it said from what year it was, but this was one of the books I had to read in high school. And I loved it so much that I got it. Well, actually, I didn't buy it. I wanted to order it on Amazon, but I couldn't find it. And then when I visited Bulgaria, I tried to find it in the bookstores, but I only found this like simplified version for younger students. I couldn't find the original book. So my grandma found it for me, and she got it for me, and she sent it to me. It has 2 volumes. This is only the first volume. The Cyrillic alphabet.
Is that similar to Russian?
So, yes, although Russians have some letters that we don't. But yeah, I actually understand some Russian, and I think Russians understand some of what we say, but not everything. Do you want me to read out a sentence?
Sure.
Ирина се оплаши и побледня. Не, гузно отговори тя. Откъде мога да ги познавам? Чакър я погледна малко учудено. От гимназията, каза той. Чакай, сетих се. Познавам най-малкия. Стефан, изключения ли? Да. It's, oh God, I don't even know if I can like translate it very well. It's a conversation between, let's see, I think a woman and is it her dad or her boss? I can't remember. I think her dad, and yes. Her dad is asking her if she knows the sons of like this teacher, and she's like, no, of course not. How would I know them? And she's obviously like a little guilty when she's saying that. So he says, well, from high school, of course. She's like, oh, wait, yeah, I remember. I know the younger one. From what I remember from the book, I think she's actually like dating the younger one secretly, so the dad's like trying to figure out what she's doing. It's a really very beautifully written book. It's called Tütün, which means tobacco, because it unfolds in, it's about the lives of people that work at a tobacco factory. I can't remember actually what year the plot takes place in. I'll lie to you, I don't know. It's been a while since I read it. My grandma found it in a bookstore, and she got it for me, because this was like one that I had requested that I wanted. I have a few favorite books from my time in high school when we had to read like classic Bulgarian literature, and this was probably one of my favorites. And rereading it, I remembered why, because I really like the author's style of writing. He's very good at describing psychological portrayals of people and what's going on in their mind. It's prose, but there's something poetic about the way he's written it. So I like it, and you know, it makes me think about, you know, where I come from and my history and kind of how things used to be in Bulgaria and how different or not things are now. I brought this whole thing, which is so dirty, because I haven't bothered to take it to a what's it called? Cleaning service, dry cleaning. It's made out of wool. Well, I'll be precise. It's made out of 34% wool, 41% acrylic, 15% polyester, 3% polyamide, and 7% cotton. And I got this when I was like, oh dear, I think it was maybe 7th grade, and I still wear it. So it must be.
I like the brooch too.
It's from my grandma. She gave it to me. Yeah.
It's pretty.
Yeah, I've had this for, I don't know, 10, 13 years. It still fits. I remained petite. I haven't grown since like, I don't know, 7th grade, I guess. So yeah, I really love it. I haven't found anything else like it, so.
And you bought it in Bulgaria?
Yeah. I was in high school, I think. Might have even been like late middle school. I don't remember anymore. But yes, made in Bulgaria. Bulgarians make good clothes and good shoes. My shoes are actually from Bulgaria too. Made there, genuine leather. I fell in love with gave these to me. So I've had them since 2007.
Do you still wear them?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think about their history as much anymore, like who gave them to me. But they just feel very me. You know, I've been wearing them for so long that I'll probably like have them forever. Yeah, I like earthy colors, neutral colors like beige and brown. So they're very me. Yeah, he had good taste.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like things made out of wood or leather or those kind of earthy things. Like I don't like things made out of glass as much. They just seem colder,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, still wear them.